The plan is to show you various different things. I do have a slide here with the things I plan to cover. So you'll see the first things we're going to show you is to make sure you know how to turn on your camera on and off, your microphone on and off, to mute yourself or to mute other people. I'm also going to go over how to present to other people in the Meet. I already started recording, but I'll show you where the button is for that if you would like to record your own meetings in the future. I'll also show you what I think is the best practice to actually schedule a Google Meet ahead of time using Google Calendar. And also based on some feedback we've had from other sessions and just some problems that people have run into using Google Meet, I have some tips, tricks, and things that keep popping up. So I'll be sure to cover that as well. Right at the very beginning, I am going to show you how it looks like on a phone compared to how it looks like on a computer. So I'm going to stop presenting for a second here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take over on my phone. So what you should see now is this is a sideways view of my phone. So if you were joining a Google Meet with a iPhone or a Android or something like that, yours would probably look a little closer to what it's going to look like on this screen. I did notice we have at least one other person, maybe more than one, joining via phone, like they're listening in. So you won't be able to obviously be able to see what I'm showing you on my screen, but I am recording this session so you can go back and see the visuals later when I have it posted on the YouTube channel. So right now I wanted to show you, I have it sideways, obviously, but the buttons are generally in the same place if you're looking at it vertically. You can see that right now I have myself muted on my phone. The way I can tell is that there is a little red, it's red for one where the microphone is, and it has a slash through it, so that lets me know that it is being muted. If I wanted to leave the call to get out of it completely, there is a little hang up of a phone that I could click and it would get me out of here. Same thing on the desktop or laptop as well. I don't have my camera turned on, but the camera would be, again, something I could turn on, turn off, just the same as if I did it on any other device. Now, I am going to show you a couple of buttons that you'll find both on the Chromebook, on a laptop, a desktop, on a phone. They're just maybe in different places. For one, I'm going to do closed captioning. So closed captioning is the CC up in the top corner. And you're going to see that it's very good about detecting who is doing the talking. So it knew that as the presenter, it automatically detected that it was me talking. And you can see that overall, it's pretty good at keeping up with the pace and typing the words correctly. I would say this would be helpful for your ESL, ELL students. I would also say if you have any deaf students that you work with, or just hard of hearing, or it might be convenient for those people to be able to just go ahead and listen in. So you can see by turning on CC for closed captioning, it will do all that typing for you automatically. So I'm going to turn that off now that you've seen that feature. And you'll also see on my screen that there's a little icon of people with a number next to it. So right there, that tells you how many people are in the room. Right now I have 25. I'm a duplicate because I'm both on my phone and on my desktop. But as people come and go, you'll see that number goes up and down. So some other things, you can see that right now we have 5 comments in the comment window. As I check them, that number is going to go down. That's based on new notifications with where that number 5 is, that comment right there. And if I click on that, I'd be able to see what is being said in the comment window. It's a little delayed, but you can see that whoever says something, it'll automatically say what time or how long ago someone said anything. And you'd be able to track the history of the conversation there. Sometimes for students, it's a little easier. And like I said, even for you, as a member of this presentation, it might be easier for you to ask a question posted in here. And then when the presenter gets a chance to come back and refer to those questions, they can just, come back and check on it and address them at that time. You'll also see there's a little eye icon next to this comment window when I pull it up. And that will tell me more info about this session. So if someone needed the link again to be able to get in here, maybe they're messaging on Google Classroom that they can't find it or whatever the case might be, you can copy and paste the information listed here and send it over to them and they'd be able to get in just as easily. You'll also see that if I click on the 3 dots, I could change to turn on captioning. I could stop presenting. And these are all different options I have. When I click on the 3 dots, so I'm going to go back just to show you that again. There's 3 dots when my screen catches up with itself, where the little eye is, and then there's 3 like etc. dots. If I wanted to see who was in the room on the computer, or excuse me, on the phone, it's a little easier for me to scroll to be able to take attendance this way. Unfortunately, even if some of you have cameras turned on, it's not going to show everybody's camera. The one thing I have not gotten a chance to verify this morning, but it was a question that came up. I'm going to hit stop broadcasting here so I can go back to my desktop. Was would I be able to record on a device? So let's say that I only had access to a phone and I didn't have a Chromebook or a laptop to base it off of. Would I be able to record the session? I'm going to go with, I think the answer to that is no. I haven't had a chance to verify that yet based on this is my 3rd session already today. But I'm going to say that you probably need a Chromebook, a laptop, or a desktop computer in order to record to be able to do what I'm doing now. But you can share your screen on any device. So how I was able to show you what was going on my iPhone, that's something you can do on any kind of device. To do that on my desk, or I'm using my desktop computer here, you'll see it in the bottom right corner. It might be a little small depending what device you're looking at it on, but it says I am presenting right now. If I turn this off, you would be able to see that there's an option for you to present. Now, you would not be able to do that right now because I am presenting. So you cannot override me presenting. And that's an important thing to know if you're working with students, that if you were to go to a slideshow, for example, and I wanted to, go through these slides or go to visit like a YouTube video, as long as I'm in presentation mode, the kids can't override anything I'm showing them. They're forced to look at my screen the entire time. And that's even if you're not actually presenting something like a slideshow, it's always probably better to be safe than sorry and just take over the wheel at the very beginning so you don't run into problems with students taking it over unnecessarily. Now, there are some positives to the fact that students can present. Like if you, as you can imagine, and we just got Dr. Gruccio's email, that this is going to be probably ongoing past spring break, with no particular end date at this time. So we will be online doing virtual learning for an extended period of time. And it may be something where you want to have virtual presentations because you're missing that element in class. If you're doing a Google Meet, the students could bring up a slideshow and talk through the rest of the students and present like they would have in a real classroom. So those features are still in there for the students. The students, however, cannot record a Google Meet. So if you are in as a quote unquote teacher account, which is really any staff member at Egg Harbor Township, you will have the record feature available to you, but you may not have it right this second since I already started recording. You would have to go into another session and hit record in order for you to see that button. But I will show you that if I click the 3 dots down in this right-hand corner, you'll see that I have a stop recording button. If I was not already recording, it would give me the option to record, and it would let me know that I need to ask everyone's permission before I actually begin recording. And then within about 5 to 10 seconds, this red record would appear in the top left corner, which is what everyone's seeing right now. If I wanted to stop recording early, let's say I want to stay in the session, but I didn't want to record anymore, I could go down to those 3 dots, hit stop recording, and it would stop exactly where I needed it to. The nice thing about it being wrapped up with Google is it's automatically going to take the video file you created and put it inside of your Google Drive. You do not need to constantly check your Google Drive to see if it's been put in there. It'll automatically send you an email of when it's available.
So how are we supposed to do attendance?
Attendance in here? So if you look up at my screen, you'll see that there's a little 26 people. If I click that to look down, I'd be able to get the names of everyone that's in here. I can't see their video at that time. If they were to start talking, they would move up on the top to be able to see it, but you're not going to see all 26 windows at the same time. You're just going to see your names that they're in here. So I went over turning your video and microphone on and off, and I also showed you how to present and record your sessions. So I'm going to show you what I think is the easiest way to schedule your Google Meets ahead of time and to avoid some of the problems that people have been having with students coming into sessions that they don't belong into. I think I saw another question go by. So you cannot, you can mute a student, but you can't unmute a student. So if I were to go back and see that I have 26 people in here, you can see the majority of everyone in here is muted already. But let's say you have one student that forgot to mute themselves or can't figure it out. You can hit the little drop down next to their name and you'll see there's a little microphone icon and you can mute that person. So it'll tell you you're about to mute them and then they will be muted. So they could just as easily unmute themselves. Like they can go back and still turn themselves back on, but at least you're able to silence them if you needed to. If they're getting out of control, you also can remove them from the room and they will be kicked out. So that little remove will force them out of this room. Important things to know if you're running into those issues. All right, so going on to Google Calendar. Now, again, I'm showing you what I think is the best way to have your rooms pre-established, that you take the time you need to set them up if you know you're meeting with certain classes during the week. And also just to make sure that you do it properly and that the kids aren't in there during times that they should not be. So you'll see on my screen, I'm going to zoom in a little more, that I accidentally deleted my 11 o'clock when I was doing my sample, but I have all these Google Meets scheduled for today. So let's say I had one coming up at 1 o'clock that I knew I wanted to schedule ahead of time. I could go to that date and go right to that time at 1 o'clock. And most of you are probably already familiar with this window, but I'm going to hit more options here. So when I do that, it's important to give it a title that makes sense. So it could be like Mrs. Mullins' 5th period, right? Or whatever makes sense for you to call the meet session. But remember, you don't want to call it something like test or something not like super generic, because the students, if they're getting several Google Meet notifications at the same time, they may not know whose room is what. So I recommend that you at least call it the subject or put your name in there or something that kind of defines it to be your Google Meet. Of course, I'm talking about it being from a classroom setting, but you could do this with a PLC or a staff meeting or anything that relates to what you might need to get in there for. Now, talking about if you did it for a PLC or a staff meeting or something like that, if you're talking a super small group, it may make sense for you to just invite the people that it applies to, in which case you know that teachers and any staff members in our district already have email addresses. And like all of you, how you were able to get in today, you got an email notification about today's Google Meet. So by doing it this way, by adding guests in here, you're going to end up sending them an email so they'd be able to just click on it and get in very easily. Now, if you're a related arts teacher and you have 150, 250 kids, you're not realistically going to write all of those kids' names in there, number one. And number two, they don't have email addresses anyway. So unless they have the Google Calendar app installed on their phone and they're logged in, they wouldn't be notified of that. So the more reasonable way would be to take the information I'm about to do in here right now and copy and paste it into my Google Classroom. So let's say it's from 1 to 2 o'clock. That part's fine. Now, the important thing you need to do here is go to Add Conferencing and click Hangouts Meet. I know some people have been confused with the word Hangout. Hangout was an old term with Google. Pretty much Meet absorbed Hangouts. So don't let the terminology confuse you. It's really the same thing that we're doing right now. And you can see you can have up to 250 people in one Google Meet. There is a possibility that video may drop out once you get to those numbers that are that high. But overall, I've been in sessions myself where I've had 50 and I haven't had any issues with that. So I can click on this here. And you can see there automatically by choosing Hangouts Meet, it comes up with a special URL just for this 5th period at 6 p.m. or 1 p.m. on the 6th. Now, I mentioned this already, but not only is there a unique URL here, but there's also a unique phone number and a unique PIN. So if a student has only access to a regular dial phone, like a home landline, they still could actually join, at least from an audio level here. Now, you could put more details of what the class is or what you're going to go over, like ELA, lesson 2, Moby Max. I don't know, whatever that might be, right? You also can add notifications and get into all of that. This really only makes sense, again, if you're going to be dealing with staff members in this Google Meet only, because notifications really aren't going to apply the same way for the students unless they have the app on their phone. The last thing I would do is I'd have to hit save. And you're going to see that Mrs. Mullins' 5th period is now listed here for 1 to 2 p.m. And if I go to Google Meet, which is meet.google.com, it's actually now nice and easy for me to click right here. I'm in this one right this second. It's letting me know it's being recorded, today's Lunch and Learn, followed by the 5th period meet, which is listed right here. Every one that I add for my Google Calendar will automatically be available the day that it's supposed to happen. So if you have 6 Google Meets in one day and don't want to have to worry about keeping track of which room you're in at any given time, this is a nice organized way to go back and reference those Google Meets you need to reference. You can't see or hear what I'm presenting. If you run into that problem, that does happen with some people, one of two things is happening. Either the person who's presenting is having a poor connection, or maybe that you have a poor connection. Doesn't necessarily mean that your Comcast internet isn't working, but sometimes just if there's a lot of load in your area, your connection may go down. In which case, I would recommend that you log yourself out and then come back into the Google Meet and come back in and see if that works. I've recommended that to some people in previous Lunch and Learns, and then all of a sudden it sort of reset itself and then it was okay. But you can imagine too, depending with your students, what their situation is at home, they may be using a hotspot in their house that they don't have regular internet access. And, if there's 3 kids all in high school and they're all trying to log in at the same time at the same device, their internet lag is going to be slower. They're going to look a little more jarbled. They may have problems with connection. So certainly keep that in mind. Try to troubleshoot the best you can. But that's where it's very helpful if you record your session. So at least those students who could not stay actively in the room don't miss the important things of your lesson. Keeping up with pace here. I know we don't have a whole lot of time. I'm going to go back to that Mullins 5th period, and I'm going to copy all this information here, and I'm going to go to my Google Classroom. Now, inside Google Classroom, like many of you, I've got multiple Google Classrooms. I'm going to go inside here, and I can paste those directions in here. Now, talking about some technical things that other people have run into, I personally recommend that you schedule these to go out only in a certain window before you're about to start your class. So let's say, we're talking about 1 o'clock today. It's only 12:20 right now. Maybe I don't want the students to get in there yet. I don't want them goofing around until I join the session. So I can schedule this and say that I want it to be posted at like 12:50. So at 12:50, the students would have access to get into the room for 1 o'clock, and I could kind of babysit and monitor, if students get in there too much earlier than that. I've talked to some of the other people in other PD sessions today who scheduled, using the same URL and code. I mean, there's nothing technically wrong with that. It's not like it won't work, but that's just something from a the problem with Google Meet and the way we have it set up is the students can join a room if it's accessible. They can't make their own room, but if you leave a room quote unquote open and you're reoccurring and reusing it, they can technically come back into your room at any time. I personally recommend that you use a different Google URL every time you do a new session, even if it's with the same kids, just so that you don't have kids coming in and out that don't belong in there during those certain times. The other thing I found that people will end up doing is they'll go to this screen instead. They'll hit join or start a meeting, and they'll throw in, this is just a test. I just want to see if it works. Don't call this room a test, because every other person who has ever been in here, I can promise you at some point joined a room that was called test. And everyone who's in here right now, whether it's people that you plan to be in this test with or everybody else, you're all going to end up in the same room. It's called test or sample or whatever would be the generic word. If you're going to stick with using meeting codes, I would do something a little more specific, that it's just going to be for your students during certain times. Or maybe if you're related arts, maybe you might want to do like sleigh ball library, just so you don't put library and end up with everyone else who typed in library. Just try to be a little more specific with your nicknames if you're going to use it by this way. Again, I personally recommend that you do it the Google Calendar way. You schedule it ahead of time, you copy and paste this, you put it in your Google Classroom and let them access it from there. And if you want to be sure that the students can't re-access it, it's not completely foolproof, but my recommendation would be that after this is posted and the session is over, then you go ahead and trash and delete that post so they're not, again, coming in and out of that room unnecessarily. Before I get into any more tips and tricks, does anyone have questions that are popping up, thoughts on things so far? I saw, how do you kick kids out of a room? Well, are you talking a Google Meet or are you talking a Google Classroom? Because they're two different things. If you're talking a Google Meet, you would go back to that people list and you would go down to the person you want to kick out. And then there's a little remove icon on any person in here. You could hit remove and it will boot them out of the Google Meet. Not to say they technically can't get back in. I mean, that's possible. I hope they would get the message if you kick them out that they're not allowed back in. But as long as the room is accessible, I believe they can still get back in here. Yes, this is going super fast. I think the limitation of trying to do this in half an hour means that I had to include a lot of information. This will be on my YouTube channel. I did not share it yet, but I do have this doc that I started last week, and I've been adding to things as I either create more videos or just as things come up. I'm going to share the link to this doc in here with you. I'm going to put it in the chat window right now. If I can figure out where it went. There it goes. It's in the chat window, this link right here. And you'll be able to access particularly these two videos. This first video is just kind of getting started, things that you should know about checking your microphone and your camera and how to get in. And then this video is a little bit deeper, how I went into the scheduling in Google Classroom and how to record. That will be able to take you there. I saw a question coming about editing Google Meet. That comes into, you need video editing software. We have not yet, as a district, offered video editing PD. You technically could. It is a video file. So if you have like iMovie on your phone, or if you use WeVideo, if you're looking to venture into something like that, you technically can edit your video. That's something, if you think that would be a useful PD going into, after spring break, I'd be happy to set that up. Just shoot me an email if you're interested in having that being offered, so that I can, get back to the powers that be and make that happen. I want to see if there's anything else. Can you upload it? So if you upload it right to YouTube, I don't think you can edit it. I think it's going to be exactly what you put up there. I know they have some trimming features, but I have not tried it with a Google Meet to give you a complete answer on that. And as the district's video person, I would edit it in something else before I would do it in YouTube, just from my own experience. But if you are looking into editing it, I would suggest either using iMovie, which you can, it's either free on your phone or it's only $5. I forget where it is now. It's relatively inexpensive. Or you can look up wevideo.com. That would be another one that you could look up to edit. I know that there's like paid versions with them, but they might be able to do the job you need and still work. And then you could download that video and then repost it. What if parents are on a device and network? Oh, I didn't get to answer that question. So if you're doing a Google Meet and you get a notification someone from the outside wants to join, it's technically up to you whether you accept that or not. But I've heard from other teachers who've run into issues by allowing other people in. So that might be a student who logged into their personal account and not their school account. There's no way for you to verify who that student is at that point. And unfortunately, they're typically the ones who will cause problems because they're in there almost anonymously, in theory. So the safe bet is for you to not accept other outside domain users. You would be notified before you accept it, whether you choose to do that or not. If you know of a specific circumstance and you want to let the kid in, I'm certainly don't stop them. But if you're concerned that things could go awry, then it might be best practice for you just to ignore or disregard any non-EHT students or staff into the room. With 2 minutes left, does anyone have any specific questions, things I didn't answer, or anything I can help you with while we still have a little bit of time? Feel free to unmute your microphone too if it's easier to get a hold of me that way. Copy.
Leanna, I didn't get how you schedule meets in Google Calendar. So I go to Calendar first and I schedule the meet and then post that information in Google Classroom.
Yes, exactly. So you would make yourself a new event. The important step you have to do though is when you make a new event, you have to get this add conferencing to get the actual meet information. That's when you would copy and paste this, the code and the phone number, because in some cases you may have students who need to participate through a phone. And that's where you would go make yourself an announcement, or if you want to add to classwork, however your system is set up, it'll work both ways. But you would, provide that information. You could post it right away, or my recommendation was to schedule that closer to about when your start time would be, so that you don't have kids messing around in there unnecessarily.
Okay, so I go to calendar and then click on conference.
Yes. Yep. And it should come up with once you click on that Hangouts Meet, you should be able to see the code with that.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you.
Other than that, we are pretty much wrapped up. So I wanted to thank you all for coming. I hope despite the pace that I had to go at, that you got something useful out of it. And I will be making the recording available before the end of the week, so you can refer back to anything that I spoke about. And I hope you have a great spring break.